for the committee to actually walk through the bill with faces up, or have the draft that I was going to walk through up on the screen?
I think for the purposes of walking through, we better have the document to refer to, but why don't I get the, we're on now live.
You're
And
live.
so, okay, so this is Senate Appropriations, and we are taking testimony from joint fiscal staff regarding the budget adjustment as it passed out of House Appropriations. So Stephanie Barrett's going to give us a walkthrough of what is in that bill. Before we start that, we know that there are a couple of things that were identified that need to, that we put on, that we have to make some decisions around, one of which is the current funding situation with our E911 system, which is doesn't have the revenues to support the service through the end of the fiscal year. The other, of course, is VSNP. They've been mobilizing, as you know. And then Stephanie, I believe you've identified some other language that might be necessary as well. So those are sort of out there that will not be reflected in the budget adjustment, but areas of spending we have to make a decision on. Okay. So with that, Stephanie, why don't you, whatever document, bring it up. Is this the, oh, okay.
This is the H138 as introduced. There were no amendments on the calendar today. There may be an amendment related to business grants tomorrow, but I thought I'd walk through this. I've highlighted everywhere that there's sort of a difference. And so sections 1 through about 46 are number changes. In most cases, the House committee agreed with the governor's recommendation. I'll just highlight where they didn't. I think we heard briefly from Adam about this modest change in the municipal current use. That came up that we were just a little bit short on where.
What that was at 16,000 and how we would deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 136 or so.
Well, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so section 1 is actually that change. Section 2 is just it changes the function total in general government. Sections 3, 4, and 5 are deleted in the House bill. And this is where in section 3, public safety that you heard about yesterday, the training money was taken out. And then in section 4 was the liquor control section where they took out the body camera piece. Section 5 was simply the function total of protection. So there was a little bit of discussion yesterday about both of those items.
Yes, that's right.
And we'll see. So those are open items for your committee to decide, if you're agreeing.
So those are the differences from what the House did versus what the governor proposed. So body cameras, there's been some discussion. Senator Sears has certainly put himself on record that we should buy the body cameras.
Absolutely.
And the training, because that's consistent with legislative intent to have that training by July 1st. Okay, so we'll revisit.
If that's
let me ask, do you want committee, do you want to make decisions now? Do you want to make a decision? Do we want to put the money in for public safety for training?
Yes.
Yes.
I thought we had kind of agreed on that.
That's what I thought, but why don't we as we go through them, and if we've made a decision, then we won't have to revisit it. So
Right.
so we will restore the funding for the body cameras and the training.
Okay.
Jane, can I just ask, given that training is always ongoing, can we anticipate this is going to be an ongoing expense to the bottom line?
No, this was training very specific to the bill that was passed, and we have 2 members of judiciary on the use of excessive force.
Right, but as new.
No, they said after this, they would embed it in their regular ongoing training.
Great, that's right. Thank you.
That's my understanding. Dick and Phil,
And-
did you?
Yeah, and actually, there's a piece of their training that they will no longer be doing. So going forward, things should be fine after this one time.
And this was to pay the overtime for the police officers because they would have to accommodate the training by outside their normal work schedule.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you. Mhm.
let's move on then. Section
What was
6.
number 5, Jane?
Well,
Number 5 is just the function total. If you add back the training and
Okay,
the body cameras and liquor control, then you'd be changing the
Yep.
function total for the protection function of government. And so we'll add an amendment that reflects that there as well.
yeah,
Okay. So section 6 through, I don't know the number, but these are all the human service changes that you've heard about, starting with Sarah Clark last week and going through Diva and Dale and mental health and DCF last week. And I don't know if you want to stop and talk about any one of these sections. The House did not make any changes in the human service area in the base here. And so the next section that we come to is quite a ways down. I'm sorry if I'm making anyone seasick with the scrolling.
but big part of those changes were simply to swap indirect CRS for indirect to
Yeah.
direct.
Right. And the FMAP change is not in here. You'll see that in the big bill.
Okay.
But
My God, I can get vertigo.
I know.
Hey, look at this. Look at the progress. We're up to page 17 already.
Wow.
It does include the piece for the veterans home in the human service area as well.
Good.
What was the veterans home?
Dick Sears special.
Oh,
No, I can't even go there due to COVID.
It was actually a bump up in the special funds, primarily that's where other funding comes in from Medicaid for the veterans home. So that's the main change here.
so, but that would all be on the web.
Yes,
Yeah, that annotates all this.
that's the total for human services. It's basically there were no changes on the House side, and in your discussions, it didn't seem like there was anything that was pending that you would change from the human service proposals for the adjustment.
No, it's just Senator Sears wanted a sort of a brief summary of the using CRF for direct salary in corrections versus funding the indirect cost. It didn't free up any CRF. It was just how it could permissible use.
Yeah, it did actually use a little bit more CRF in a few places.
Did it?
Yep. Section 31 is education, and this is where you see the 3.5 added for the Burlington High School Macy's piece.
But the House agreed with that.
Where
Yes,
is that,
the House agreed
Stephanie?
with that, and that's all on the ESSER. It's on the federal fund line on line 13. So it's through the ESSER
got it.
dollars, but that's happening.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, basically, the House concurred with the governor's recommendation on that.
They agreed with the governor.
Yeah.
It just had this tiny correction. It was in the wrong section when it came from the governor.
Oh, yes, that's right.
It was in the admin section, and it needed to be moved to this education service section.
Okay.
And so because we changed that section, we have to catch up with the function total in section 32. In natural resources, this is where you see the money coming back in for the state parks, et cetera. But you see section 34 is deleted. This is where the cameras were taken out for fish and game wardens.
Oh,
So I'm assuming that you want to put that back in consistent with what you've done.
yeah, I
I'd like
think
to do that.
I think that consensus was we would do body cameras for all of law enforcement. So yes.
So when you put that section 34 back in, we'll amend section 35 with the function total.
Okay.
The transportation sections, There were no changes until we got to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and the total did not change. It's the source of funds that changed in the House. The House, the governor had proposed that 750 of additional expenditure in the transportation fund line. The House committee asked that because it's primarily due to COVID response expenditures, if that could be done out of the coronavirus relief fund, and the House did do that out of the coronavirus relief fund. So that is the change that's happening in section 39.
So that just freed up T-fund money.
It did. It just left T-fund freed up to carry forward or to help close out the year, whichever. So that's the only change from the total recommendations from the governor in the transportation area that the House made on the funding side. And then that brings us all the way through the transportation section, and that basically is it for the base part of the budget, for the numbers changes in the base part of the budget, and then we start into the language part of the bill. So
Okay.
section 42 is updating the fund transfer, reversion, and reserve section. It's a section we put in the big bill every year, and there's always updates to it. The ellipses are keeping things in place that are existing. It's usually adding or slightly changing existing things. So this is where the 1.2 comes in for the forest and parks piece. It's a transfer into the fund from the general fund on line 15. And on line 4 on the next page, this is a reversion from the Department of Health Administration, 252. I don't know if we touched on that much, but that's a calculated amount that from the closeout of the previous year is available to revert. And F and G are, the amounts are the same as what was recommended by the governor. These were just sort of technically corrected pieces of language. The way they were drafted originally changed slightly on advice of Ledge Council folk. $650,000 reverting from clean water was not quite drafted to fit into this section correctly. And then the $200,000 of the transportation and infrastructure bond, that transfer from the transportation fund to the TIB fund wasn't quite structured correctly either. So the numbers are not changing at all. I'm just highlighting that it's slightly different than the language we originally got from the governor. And this is just a note I added. The House struck the language that was included from the governor regarding the legislative use of space in the Capitol complex.
Oh, that's 113 State Street battle.
Yeah. So that language is not in the bill as it's going to come to you.
Okay. Committee, any thoughts about that?
Yeah,
That
what
basic-
is, what
Well,
is,
it was way back when we were thinking that we could meet physically and looking for ways of creating additional space outside the Capitol building. And so there was in the House passed bill, and we got it. It was said basically that empty floor in the 113 State Street would be available for legislative use. Obviously, that hasn't happened. The administration would like to move forward with their plan to use the space. And since it's not being used by the legislature, thought that was a reason to get rid of that language. Obviously, the House wants to preserve it for potential legislative use.
and why would the administration need that space?
They would move out of rental space, and this is state-owned property.
Well, wouldn't we, if we aren't going to need it, why not let them do that?
Well, that was their argument, but the House obviously didn't want to give it up. So I can't speak for the testimony in the House, and I don't know.
Excuse me, sorry.
Well-
Did the administration, didn't they already have a plan to upgrade that space?
Yes,
And
they did.
held off on it? and they held off on their plans to upgrade.
That is right. And so they opposed this from the beginning and wanted to preserve their ability to use the space. Our budget included the language that the legislature would have use of it, which we haven't had to use. So they're asking to have that exclusive use language removed. The House, obviously, by wanting to keep the original language around legislative use, didn't concur, but I don't know their thinking, and I don't know, Stephanie, if you can answer that question for us.
I did not sit in on the sort of the discussion in their markup. I believe it's just, in case there is some opportunity to actually meet in person toward the end of the session and it needs to be in that larger space, preserving that option.
So Becca, has there been any discussion around meetings or anything that would?
Not since this latest surge, there hasn't.
Okay.
And if I could just ask, I haven't seen this space, but I can't imagine it's near enough to allow the House to meet. So were they thinking of it as committee space?
It was primarily committee space, was my understanding.
Initially, right, before we went totally remote.
It's the
Because
top floor of the tax department.
it seems as though it's almost impossible to imagine a situation where
Yeah,
they could use that, and they won't let us adopt space if they're not getting equal space. So it just seems like a recipe for not using it unless the administration uses it.
well, and then we're paying rent somewhere else
Yeah.
for rented space. I mean, I think that's kind of a waste of money.
Well, why don't we set this aside and get some fundamental questions about something more in writing in terms of what they're paying, how it would save money, their anticipated use, and if we could get some, maybe Maria can provide it, or we can ask just for a brief description of why the House determined that that space should still be saved and made available for the legislature.
That sounds
And
good.
it may very well be something from the House perspective that is unique because of their size or whatever. I don't know, but we can find out more.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think one thing to keep in mind, of course, is that so much of the advanced work in preparing for what we thought was going to be a lull in the pandemic was done by the previous speaker. And it was not anticipated that the current speaker would be taking over at the helm there. It was all unexpected. And I think Jill probably was not privy to most of those conversations that the previous speaker had about this. And she may be hesitant to change directions without learning more about that plan. But again, this is conjecture. I think we should go back to them and get some more information.
Yeah, and maybe Becca, the better person to go to would be the speaker, so that we're coordinating discussions. Because if the decision here is reflective of discussion with the speaker, then we want to obviously understand that. So perhaps that's something you could see what the thinking is behind this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll set this one aside and keep going.
I was just gonna concur with the idea of asking about it, but note that the prior speaker did suggest that a 75 member house would be much more efficient.
Did you, is that what you'd like to substitute in that section, Senator Sears?
Well, I don't think it would be probably past the house, but yeah, I would love to do that.
Maybe we could get it to 50 in conference.
Oh,
We are going to find out what tax was going to use that for and when, right?
yes, we were going to get a kind of a written summary from the administration.
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
We will follow up and get that for you so that you have that.
Okay.
final markup. Section 43 is just this update that's, these are the certified funds and the whole commitment. We start with an
Oh,
S,
yeah.
they always updated.
Mhm.
So section 44 should be familiar. This is the intent language that you had in S36. It's exactly as you passed it in S36.
Oh, okay.
is
Well, we
about-
love it, Stephanie.
Yeah, this is about just looking and making sure that we maximize CRF funds to the extent that anything can be swapped out into the new funding sources in the new bill and free up CRF that we've already spent, that they make a good faith effort to do that. And they come back at the end of February and tell us what they're seeing so far.
Mhm.
Section 45, this was in a different version, a very different version from the governor when he proposed it. This is the fund that would allow freed up CRF monies to be used by the governor for emergency response, health and safety and public welfare. The House drafted it as coming through the Joint Fiscal Committee up to a total of $3 million. What I'm going to recommend is that you just have a small tweak to the language here to the extent they're available, because they haven't been identified fully yet where this up to $3 million would come from. But that's it. It's the same concept, but not as broad as the way the governor had originally drafted it, and with a hard cap number in it at $3 million.
Is April 30th a good date?
I don't
It's-
know how to answer that, but
Well, no, I mean, I guess I'm asking the question because I doubt that we're going to have a budget through, and there might be a need. We don't know the progression of this pandemic for the next, and so we February, March,
Yeah.
April, maybe April 30th is fine. Maybe 3 months is fine.
That 90 days will go by fast.
Well, that's why I don't know. I was thinking more like May 15th or something, just in case.
Go for it.
so
But-
I'm on the document. I'm gonna highlight that one, and we'll keep that one open too, just so you can.
Okay.
If you think that's long enough, go for it. That'd be fine. Then
Well, sometimes we run into problems if we set our dates too early, and then we've had to go in and amend.
And it
And in this case, the only place we could do it is the budget bill, I guess.
Yeah,
That
and
won't be done, maybe.
It won't be done.
I think we ought to do it.
All right, well, let's tentatively
but this
set it.
construct is something that the committee, having to go through joint fiscal, as opposed to just open-ended the way it was originally drafted, is something that committee is,
Is that how we did the first 75?
yes. Well,
Okay.
not how we had them report on the first 75. So that the first 75 was pretty broad, but they had to report on what they were spending it on. That was, early in the pandemic and a much broad,
Mhm.
an initial piece. But this is, for the $3 million remaining piece, first we have to know that it's available within CRF. And then it would be,
Okay. Well, joint fiscal can move pretty quickly when we have to. So it's putting forth, the governor wanted open-ended, I believe, right?
and this is within 5 days.
But no, I mean, in terms of the amount, the 3
Yeah, he did
million.
not have a cap amount, and he didn't have the, he had the sort of open-ended, just how much was open-ended and the process was direct, all under him.
Okay. The question is, well, you've got to have it before you can spend it.
Can I just ask about the phrase imminent peril?
Yeah, like, how do you define it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that we're talking about a virus, but it seems to me you'd have to stretch that quite a bit to spend more than it. That would be the most direct possible way of defining the expenditure. Because we do a lot of things to slow the spread to whatever. Is it regarded as strict language?
It's certainly imminent peril is very, it seems like it's way up in terms of the severity as opposed to oftentimes what we might be doing to mitigate risk.
Right, or slow
Is
the
that what
spread.
you're
Yeah,
talking about?
so I mean, for instance, increasing vaccination, it's, in a sense, it's to address an imminent peril, but not,
Not as timely as it.
No.
right. I mean, it,
Imminent peril implies that somehow that you're in a very dangerous immediate situation.
yep.
And
So could you say that anything under the emergency order is imminent peril?
well, let's go back and see what we did in when we did our language that gave the joint fiscal office and what the governor, how we worked that 75 million that we gave him. Now, I don't remember all the details of that language. Is any of that transferable here, Stephanie? I'm wondering.
Maybe I can, what I can do, Jen is the drafter of this, and we can
Mhm.
actually sort of do a little compare and contrast for you.
Okay.
The follow-up
All
memo.
right. It just seems imminent peril is a very, very high bar to
Yeah.
spend a dime. I think that's what we're talking about. Is that the concern here?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So,
We'll compare it to the motion that accepted the original CRF.
yeah, if we could, just for consistency.
Yeah.
But we do need to add, they can't spend it until it's been identified, it's available. So we'll set that aside and
Okay, so
take a look at
we'll
what's
follow
been
up.
written in the past and the extent to which we can make it align it.
This next little box with the orange, the legislature has a little bit of CRF balance left. And I think for clarity, because we have some expenditures that it would lodge against that, is just making it clear that the legislature can continue to spend that money through the remainder of FY21. We would want to, this is a request that Steve thinks should come into the bill. It didn't get formulated in time for the House, but it's just just making it clear that the balance at the legislature, which is between $150,000 and $200,000, can continue to be used for CRF related expenses for the legislature through the end of the fiscal year.
But that gets us
To the end of June.
to the end of through fiscal year 21. Okay, through
Through this
June.
session.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Committee, all set on that?
Mhm.
In other words, we want to just put a fence around that money until June
Yeah.
30th.
It's not adding any new money. It's just making it clear, because of the way the language was in the underlying bill that went through December 30th, it's making it clear that it can be continued to be
Yeah.
utilized and applied to expenditures that are appropriate.
After which it could be
After
reverted. Yeah.
Section 46 is also from S36. This is the
Oh, yeah.
allowing of the payments for the incurred expenses before December 20th on the
Okay.
contracts.
Yeah. This is our language. Yeah.
And it keeps the remaining balance fenced in until
Mhm.
there's further legislative action. And then 47 is the subsidy program extension from S36. So that's exactly when from your bill to their bill, exactly
Mhm.
drafted. Section 47A, this is the $3.6 million for COVID related expenses at state colleges, but it was changed from CRF to general fund. That was because the House didn't want to, the amount of officially available CRF funds was fully subscribed. Adam and I spoke this morning, and there's a likelihood that you may be able to change this back to CRF because we have the pending FEMA change. He's got some other areas where he's identified potential capacity. So we're working on sort of, he's working on identifying how this can be changed back to CRF funds, and we should have that tomorrow or Tuesday morning available. So that's why that general fund piece is highlighted.
Okay. And that's good,
Um,
because if we can use CRF general fund, it's totally flexible. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
And so if we do switch back to CRF, the question in 47A is, would you want to have that contingent language as well, where the additional 1.4, if it was available, would also be available to state colleges? The House did not include it because they did it out of general fund and figured they'd come back to it probably in the big bill, but
Yeah.
I
Um,
believe
I would be in favor of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see Phil and Bobby, and you're both in favor. I don't know about anybody else. If you've got a question or a concern, speak up.
I'm for it.
You're for it. Okay. Alice, are you there? Dick?
Yes, I'm okay with it.
All right.
I'm
we'll-
fine with it. Sorry, I didn't realize I was out of commission.
Oh, I can't see you.
You
So-
couldn't because I had stopped my video for some reason.
I can, the bar below, I can see Phil, Bobby, and Stephanie.
Yeah.
So we're gonna switch that pending confirmation
that
from
it's
Adam
available. That
to CRF with the contingent language that the remaining 1.4 that would support the 5 million of COVID-related expenses that we had outlined yesterday, could be used for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be good.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So,
To be very familiar, this is the everybody eats piece that was both in the
Uh-huh.
governor's BAA proposal and in your S36 bill.
okay.
Yep.
Section 49, this is the 75,000 to get the filing done through the end of March. That was in
Yep.
it.
Okay. I'm glad that they liked everything we did.
They did. The Agency of Human Services Healthcare Stabilization Fund in Section 50, exactly as you drafted it, the three pieces, the long-term care piece, the adult day piece, and just blessing that transfer of money between ACCD, AHS and ACCD related to the healthcare providers that did come through the ACCD door.
And going back to the first,
Yeah.
there was some discussion about residential care. Is that I had to leave. Did that get? Did you say that that relief would be available to them as well?
I believe that I'm like 99.9% sure that's true. They've given actually out money to residential care under this, because residential care is a long-term care facility.
I would think so, but I remember somebody raised that question, Bobby or Rich.
Yeah.
And I,
Yeah,
But I knew some of the ones that are needing extraordinary relief for the residential care where
Yeah.
they've had a positive case.
Can I ask a question about the adult days? It's Alice.
yes, Alice.
So are they getting the money? Are they, many of them were closed totally and then still like working, doing some kind of things with people, but not actually at the facilities? Are they open? Are they all under the same orders, and are some open now for day service, or is it all being done remotely?
I think it's all remote.
It's all remote.
And I think this is to help them with their fixed costs, you see, because they can't generate any income. So they've asked to have,
And this
You know,
is a May. It's not a guaranteed amount of money. It's up to the AHS if they have it available within the fund.
and it would be, it would also be based on the circumstances, because I'm sure there's quite a variance in facilities.
And this would go until when? Is this?
Remainder of the fiscal year.
End of the fiscal year, okay. Okay.
I know
This is our language.
mine is providing some services. We just had a meeting with them.
Yeah, I think.
They're also helping people to go online and sign up for vaccinations and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and
They're
they're
not-
doing care packages and delivering them
Yeah.
to their homes. So they're trying to, help people with isolation and even though they're limited. So it's probably varies based on each provider. But this allows money to go to adult days.
I think that's good.
Okay.
I
Well, it's
forgot-
our language, so I hope we like it.
But it's only if the agency decides to do it, right?
I'm sure they will.
I'm sure they will.
As long as there's money there, they will.
I can't believe it. Keeping the adult days at least intact is such a key part of the community-based services, that it's sort of like the childcare system. You've got to support it in the interim so that you've got the capacity when you need it and can use it.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
That's absolutely the truth.
I'm just going to step back for a moment. I forgot to add, before section 49, the House did take out the language regarding the business grants, the 6.15 up to 10 million. And we may see a floor amendment tomorrow on that. So I forgot to put a little note in that they had taken it out, and I just wanted to just flag that for you.
Is the floor amendment from
when
the
we find-
Appropriations Committee?
No, I don't know, because they didn't support this. So
And
you
I've
may have
talked-
members of the House Appropriations that may not for the amendment, but I don't know.
Okay. I did talk to
They-
Senator Sorokin, and one of the things that we have learned, and that is, and we've had some discussion about this, and that is appropriating money that doesn't have any kind of policy parameters around it. And so that we ran into that a lot with business grants. There was a great deal of concern around not putting out the grants in a more strategic way and where it was needed more. And my impression, and I have concurrence from Senator Sorokin that that they would like more time to really figure out how this money should be directed, if this is the best way to direct it, what the new federal bill does to help businesses and allow that process to go forward before we plunk $10 million out to small businesses who I think all they have to do is certify they didn't get any assistance from other programs or something very basic. So the House Appropriations Committee did not include it. And obviously from the governor's budget address, he's not happy that wasn't done. Once again, this is not that it won't be done. The question is around giving ourselves the time to do the necessary policy work to make sure that any money that's being spent, and this is general fund, and this was something that could have been proposed back in November or December with the use of CRF funds, which we were asking to say, can't you look at where help is needed the most and use the money strategically. So there's a long history here with this request relative to past legislative concerns around appropriating money without taking the necessary time to do the policy work to make sure, or to give the greatest assurance that it's being directed in a way that's understood and consistent with legislative intent.
But I think if this misses the boat, when would the 10 million be available through Michael's special bill?
We're probably going to have to do a special bill like we did with CRF, because 200 million for rental assistance, we've got to move that out. We've got to figure out how much of that to allocate for utility assistance for both electrical or water, sewer. So the extent to which we might be able to go back and use the new slug of money rather than CRF and free that up. So I suspect that we will have to do a separate bill to, once we have the time and we understand what we can do and can't do under that new federal legislation, So I would see that moving forward in a separate bill like we did with the CRF funding we did last time. We did several separate CRF bills, plus we did the hazard pay bill as a separate bill. So I do not see that if it doesn't get put in the budget adjustment within this very quick turnaround time, that there isn't another avenue to do something timely.
Yeah, okay. Sounds like a plan.
And I just wanted to mention it because it's not in the bill and it could be by the time you actually get it. I don't know. Probably.
And I know from hearing from those of us on joint fiscal, and I know from talking to Senator Sorokin, we have said one lesson we learned is we needed to take more time to give the necessary deliberations around how this money would go out. The money that went out, if you look at the list of Vermont businesses, people would say, that's not where the need was, but it was done for utility and simplicity. And we heard from Tom Cavett that we really should do a better job of targeting. So what those parameters should be, I think we need to give our policy committees the opportunity to do that work.
Yep. No, as long as we do a special bill or something like that, I think, yeah, we should have some parameters around that. You can't just ship it out the door.
Well, we know that the way it was shipped out was less than strategic, and we took some, and Tom Cavett was very helpful in making us understand the importance of using the money in a more directed way. So that is something that I've talked to Senator Sorokin about, and certainly want that committee to have the opportunity to undertake that policy discussion.
Yeah.
So any questions? Is the rest just ours, Stephanie?
Well, pretty much. Section 51 is just the state match on FEMA for the homelessness, and the FEMA money was up above, and that might change, obviously, when we get the clear picture on what the Biden FEMA 100% actually, how it's actually implemented. But that's exactly, Section 51 is exactly as it was drafted in S36.
Okay.
We are in DCF. You talked about VSNP a little bit yesterday. So if you were going to add one-time money, it would be in this vicinity of the bill where you would add it as an amendment. So I just noted that for this run through.
Well, maybe we should have some discussion around that in terms of it's not CRF eligible. That's what Commissioner Brown told us. They had explored that in the past. Because it's a revenue loss funded by the dog registrations. I just got a call this morning from a fellow that said, I didn't have very much money, but a stray kitten came in and I took it in and I thought I could get some help to have it neutered, and now the money's all out. And so he had called, and I guess probably Alice, is Sue still the head of the?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
she is. She's very conscientious about the money too. I had a guy call yesterday also about a dog that, said the program's out of money. So, but
Why don't we just put the 175 or whatever?
Well, we have to double it, Bobby, because we've got really lost revenue from last spring and probably this spring, is if I understand
Correct.
the memo correctly. Stephanie, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so the revenue loss from last year is $167,000, and DCF projects that they are on track to have very similar experience with revenue in FY21 to FY20. So the amount of money that would essentially get the program back running is about $330,000.
Let me ask, we would have had some savings between when the program ran out of money, because unless we've got a big debt, and
Yeah.
Alice, you mentioned something about vets had not been paid. Do you know if there's some money owed, the program owes?
And there's money owed to vets. You know, I had tried to get this information from Sean. You know, he had quite a bit of time to kind of come in and give us all the details. So, but as I say, it's not a high priority program in the department. So Sue had said that there were vets who are owed money. So the other thing, I mean, I'm surprised, I hate to go back to this, but I'm surprised it wasn't Corona covered, because town
Yeah.
clerk, in addition to the, you know, people not getting dogs registered wasn't a priority during COVID, but town halls were closed. So you couldn't even get in there to do it, in addition to it not being a priority for a lot of families.
I think they're talking about
So
lost revenues to
Yeah.
government, local government, and
That's the issue, is that
That's the issue.
It's a lost revenue, and you explicitly can't use CRS for lost revenue.
So can,
when it relates to government, that's what, that's where where it really hits.
yeah, okay.
so how much money has or how much service has been provided that hasn't been compensated for?
We don't know.
No, I can't seem to get that information from the
Can
department.
somebody must have that information. Can Stephanie, is there any way to
I'll
get?
try with Sarah Truckle again to say if they just stopped paying, or if they actually are tabulating, you know.
The other thing is whether we could adjust the amount downward, because maybe if everything's been put on hold, they may have, they may not have incurred any expenses, or maybe we have an awful lot of dogs and cats to be neutered between now and June 30th.
The only area I'm really, think we have to do is if the service has been provided, we should cover that up to this point.
Well, I'd be more generous and say, I think we probably should pay our bills, and we should pay, fund the service through the end of the fiscal year, and then we can do what we want in the big bill.
Right.
I agree.
Well, I would just say though that if the service has been provided, but if they've held up on these animal surgeries and stuff, and it's not been done, then it might not be at the same level.
That's true. So what I'm saying is, even if we pay our back any bills and we fund the neutering from now to the end of the fiscal year, it appears that maybe the 330, we won't need quite that much money.
We're basically saying the same thing.
Okay.
And I will find out operationally if there's like a pre-approval, can a vet go ahead and do the work and then bill later?
Many other groups have been impacted by the close of various organizations. So you look at those that rely on court surcharges, for example, and other groups, they're in the same boat. So I'm certainly not opposing any VSNP funding, but I do want to caution us that there are a lot of other folks who are impacted as well.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's true. So the question is,
but obviously we've had enough, emails regarding our support for this particular piece.
well, I know that the whole issue of animal control and is probably somewhat unique in that regard. If Stephanie can get us a little more information, at least I'm thinking people are sympathetic, pay the bills and see if we can at least help. Many of these pets are obviously owned by people that don't have the money to pay for the service. And then you end up with strays or abused animals. And so So
I-
why don't we
yeah.
see what?
I didn't
it-
mean
what
to
Mike said.
intimate that I was opposed to the idea. I just want to mention that there are other groups who've been impacted by
Absolutely.
a
But
loss of
we know
revenue.
as a dog lover, Senator Sears, huh?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Marley's at doggy day camp today. He's having a ball.
oh.
We'll be posting pictures soon.
With the pack.
He's the leader of the pack.
Oh, I can believe that. But look who he's had as a tutor.
I know.
All right,
Don't
Stephanie,
forget,
we got,
he was about 9 weeks old when he attended his first Senate Appropriations Committee meeting.
That's
that's
right.
right. I know. Oh, gosh. Well, now he's a senior member.
Ranking them.
Anything else, Stephanie?
Well, yeah, I just got tossed out of Zoom and came back in on the iPad because it seems a little more stable. I don't know if Chrissy's able to, she seemed to get tossed out as well. And so section 51 is, I don't have this because I can't do it on the iPad, but if you have the document in front of you, the House added language around BGS reviewing any design documents related to the Beckett
We just had a
Isn't it-
hearing on that the other day.
They're working jointly. Do we need to tell them to work jointly?
No, and we're actually holding a hearing next Tuesday morning, a week from today, a week from Friday on the whole, how to deal with aggressive kids. We've had some real problems. The quicker we can get Beckett up and running without us interfering with it, the better off we all are.
And the second piece they added regarding Beckett is before the $2 million appropriation can be spent, that there needs to be a secure warranty bond for the project. So that was a new section added by the House on the Beckett piece in section 51A.
Is
I
that
don't know.
is that a standard practice or is that putting?
I understand from Catherine that it is often a standard practice when we're working with a private entity. So it's the B part, of line 10 here that Chrissy just pulled up. Thank you.
So my question is, if in fact this is standard practice, then for us to be writing language saying, please employ your standard practice is a bit gratuitous.
Yeah.
What's happening now, and again, I'm gonna be very blunt about this, that there was a kid who was placed in a motel with 2 DCF caseworkers because the sheriffs weren't available to transport the kid. He ended up assaulting one of the caseworkers. He's now in Bennington at 204 Depot, but that's the type of behavior that's happening because of the lack of a secure facility. We should be doing everything we can to speed this, not slow it down.
So I don't know whether requiring a security bond is what that adds, whether it in fact would be something that we would do as standard practice. Is that going to be viewed as a deterrent, as Senator Sears has articulated, by adding another requirement? So perhaps we can get a bit more information from BGS around.
Well, I can tell you where it's coming from. The not rights and democracy. What's the name of that group?
My understanding is that
Ed Paquin's group wants changes in the design.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
the bond, I think, request came from the House Institutions Committee primarily.
But a lot of this is coming because what is the name of that, Alice?
It's not rights and democracy, but it's something like that.
Disability rights?
Disability rights. They want changes in the building design, and I think that's where this is going.
But if BGS, why, if the state is putting the money, would we not, as a standard procedure, wouldn't BGS review and approve, or would they?
I thought they said they were going to.
They're working jointly. I know BGS has been very much involved.
Maybe it's because there's some new people at BGS. Chris Cole left. There's a new person. I don't
Yeah,
know.
we,
So
Yeah.
that-
well, she's been there, Alice. She was
I know, I
there.
know.
Chris brought her in.
Yeah.
I guess what, maybe it doesn't do any harm. Maybe it's a belts and suspenders thing about, I can't imagine we would, since they're involved, maybe we should get a memo from
Yeah.
BGS
Yeah.
affirming how they are going to proceed with their role in this facility, with the development of this facility.
We can do that. We'll ask for them to provide that.
All right, that
We
could-
had testimony in Senate Judiciary this week on this very issue, and my understanding and my remembrance, this is unnecessary language. The
Yeah.
commissioner is working on making sure that they get what DCF needs. They're working closely.
The request from the prisoners' rights group looks like it would definitely increase the cost of the project. Much larger gymnasium, windows in some places where they aren't planted. I mean, look, so I don't know if that plays into it at all. Are they,
the one thing though that comes to mind is, does BGS shall review and approve any design? All I can think of is the Vermont Psychiatric Hospital. And remember, they said the way it was designed added much more cost. It added because because there wasn't visibility. Remember, they had to add mirrors so that the staff could see. And I sometimes wonder, the extent to which design, and we look back and say, well, who designed that, or whatever. So it seems to me that
Yeah.
it's important that we approve the design, but even if BGS should approve it, how does that guarantee it's going to be reflective of what Vermont Disability Rights thinks should be there?
Well, what makes Vermont Disability Rights people be professionals at designing something like this? I mean,
Yeah.
I would bet my money on BGA.
the problem is the rights group sues, and that's half of the reason why we're in this position. They don't like it, they sue. And then, like, we're just settling a lawsuit with them.
Over
But
Woodside.
Yeah.
I guess, Dick and Alice, you've been taking testimony. I would think Beckett, because they've been in the business of administering treatment programs, would have a good sense of what are the physical requirements and what promotes a good therapeutic atmosphere and what is necessary. So that's why I'm wondering how this, I don't know what this language will achieve that we wouldn't get just from BGS, DCF, and Beckett working together to design a facility that promotes the best security and the best treatment for the youth involved.
Disability rights ideas may be and should be taken into consideration, but that should be between Beckett and the department and them, not us deciding how to build a building. We're going to get into that level of detail in a budget adjustment bill. God help us if we ever try to build a salt shed.
Well, so I guess the nexus is the $2 million.
Yeah.
I'm going to say we set this aside, understanding what, the thinking behind it, but does it really?
But the $2 million, I thought that's a lease. They're providing it just the way they did. I mean, they've done this with a lot of other programs. I know back when I was running 204, they helped us with money for capital improvements, and then we paid it over time.
Well, I think there's money in here, the 2 million, and the language carry that we wanted to be sure. And Stephanie confirmed it would automatically carry forward under other universal carry forward language.
I think that was already agreed to, by the way. So I don't care. I don't think that's a problem. think
Yeah,
that's
and
what they agreed to, wasn't it, Alice? And Philip may remember.
I just want to be, I just saw a note flash across my email. This was, we drafted this referencing the 2 million that's in the budget adjustment, but the amount they want covered by the bond is actually the 3.2 because 1.2 is already existing in the DCF budget. So to the extent that you decide, I know this is on hold, but if you end up including the surety bond, the number needs to change to the total state investment of 3.2.
My question we need to find out from BGS is this what the standard practice, or is this something that we're doing unique to this capital
Yeah.
project?
We will get the answer on that.
Okay. So we're gonna set that aside.
Yeah,
For
we will
now.
revisit that one when we get the answers. That's an open section.
All right, rental assistance, that's exactly what we did. That's
Yep.
to pay the applications for December.
Yes.
Okay,
And then section 53 is exactly as you drafted it. This the $10 million piece out of the 200 million new.
yeah, okay,
And section 54 is the little technical change for the timing around the hazard
yeah,
pay
uh-huh,
wording. Section 55 is essentially as it came from the governor. Anthea just did some tweaking in subsection B for the drafting. There's no actual substantive change. It's just slightly drafted more correctly than as it came initially. Section 56, my coloring got off. This should have been yellow, bright yellow. This is a new section being added on the vehicle incentive and emission repair program, which is just amendments around the date, primarily that it's striking the ensure that the emission repair program is operational no later than July 1st, 2021. It's striking that out in two sections. I believe the July 1st date is not achievable, apparently.
no, I think that's right, that it turned out to be more complicated.
And then section 57 is the last section, and it has all those complicated, making sure the effective dates for the pieces on CRF corrections are stretching back in time the way they need to.
Yep, okay,
And so that is the bill. The only thing I didn't note here is the E911 piece, and I am working on understanding what the balance is in the fund and for the audit report for 20, but I want to understand 21 before I understand if we need to do something.
all right. We did meet, Bobby and Stephanie and I did meet with Barbara Neal and Roger Marcoux around the funding, and that service is funded through the Universal Service Fund, a percentage. And there are 4 uses of that fund. And what's happening is the revenues that are paid out after the first 911 is the 4th on the list. Telephone Lifeline, paying the fiscal intermediary is one. We had added a 0.4% to fund broadband connectivity. And so what is left goes to 911. And last year, they were able to close out. Their spending exceeded the revenues, but they closed out using a reserve they had, which they didn't want to do because it's to help them with upgrades and future technology needs. But this year, that cookie jar is empty, and they're going to be ending up this fiscal year, I don't know, maybe 700,000 short. We're trying to sort that out, as Stephanie said. So that's just but the longer term problem is one of funding and having revenues sufficient. And I don't think as a state, we would want to not fully fund the need to operate our 911 emergency system. So that's where we're trying to get more information, but that was a request that came in that did not get considered by the House. It came in as they were wrapping up. The Appropriations Committee did ask about it, and Finance and Management Commissioner, Adam Gresham, said, well, it would be taken care of or by having the Agency of Public Safety. But we know that that won't happen by July 1st. And we also know there's not much capacity in public safety to pick it up if they had to come in and get 402,000 to pay for overtime for the training. So it seems like it's an issue that we can't avoid trying to address. So that's one that came to us later on in the process. So other than that, Stephanie?
That's the end of the bill. And so I have about, I think, 5 or 6 open sections. that E911 that you just discussed, that what we just discussed around the Beckett facility, the VSNP, finding out more about what Adam and I will figure out if the CRF for the state college can be done. And then we also want more information on the Carroll definition for the $3 million piece. And we want to find out savings and more detail on the plan from the administration on the Capitol complex space, the 133.
Yeah. Yes, and then Becca will follow up with the speaker regarding the House thinking about the space and the extent to which that may have changed from when it was put in last March. The world is so different today.
And then
We
in
have-
another, I have you just adding back the pieces that the House took out.
Okay, yeah.
Those are the other changes.
Stephanie, on the Beckett thing, there was a next steps provided by DCF, and I believe it's on the Judiciary Study Committee website for 126. And it outlines DCF's plan for construction, finalized floor plan in January, complete schematic site plan by civil engineer in February, generate construction drawings and specs by March, and begin construction in May. So, I mean, it's got all of that information there that might be helpful to the committee. I don't know how to get it to everybody. We already went through all this, and I don't know if they had this presentation by Commissioner Brown.
You mean, it sounds like you mean talking about House institutions, since that seems to be the
Whoever
genesis of.
came up with this idea, I don't know if they got this information, but it gives you all the, I'm
I will
pretty
find-
satisfied that it's covered here.
Catherine and Becky Wasserman will know if the House Institution Committee got the same slide deck that you did.
But it's available on the Judiciary Committee, Senate Judiciary Committee website.
Okay. All right, so we have a little bit more work. Don't forget, we don't even have this bill yet. It's getting second reading today. So we're moving along pretty quickly, to be honest.
Is it gonna make it in the door, or are we just gonna do it when it hits the floor?
It's
Well,
gotta
we
hit
can't
the door, but then it's out.
I don't think, right, we're gonna get it referred to us and pass it out the same day.
Yep.
Boy, they're
I
gonna
think the
be.
clerk has to go to the State House and get his book.
Hey, Jane,
Oh, yeah.
I apologize. I got a call from Steve Klein, and I hopped off when we were wrapping up talking about the line item that deals with the adult day. I'm wondering if Stephanie's still on the call, if she could, if we could take a minute and just look at that I had a question about that.
Okay, so it is in section, let me get to the right section for you.
Thank you.
Section, it's the healthcare stabilization fund section.
It gives the authority for them to use money from the provider stabilization fund. They may use it to support adult days, and just like they're doing long-term care.
Page 30, lines 1 through 4 is the language, and it's just the way we drafted it in S36. So it doesn't define an amount of money. It just gives the authority to the agency to use available state healthcare stabilization funds, which are CRF dollars, to ensure provider sustainability.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking is just in the last 24 hours, it's come on my radar screen that there may be some long-term providers, some nursing homes that did not qualify for the second round of the ACCD funds. There are a few providers that seem to be caught betwixt and between. They're not showing enough of a loss from one quarter from the previous quarter because they were already down in the quarter before. So there isn't enough of a disparity for them to qualify. I don't have it in front of me. So I'm just wondering if the language allows people in that situation. So they're not necessarily adult days. They're, I think it's Halton Home and Bradley House in my district. So they're nursing facilities. But
Sounds like residential care facilities.
residential, and so would they qualify under that language to apply for the?
That's actually in that's the sub one that allows the agency to disperse funds appropriated under the healthcare stabilization to any long-term care facility in urgent need of extraordinary financial relief in the event of a COVID-19 outbreak at the facility. So they have to have both the financial need and they have had to have at least one positive case.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And that was the earlier discussion that residential care facilities are under that box of long-term care. It's not just the nursing homes, but it's the other residential care and the enhanced residential care facilities. Because the concern was around Craftsbury, which is a residential care facility and had a major corona outbreak.
Okay.
So it is that long-term care facilities in the round two might not have met the bar on their financial structure, but that round is closed on the health stabilization. And so this new language opens up the new long-term care.
This isn't gonna help that outfit that didn't qualify though, is it, Becca?
No, only if they have
An outbreak,
right.
yeah.
That's what I'm noodling through here. I'll come back to the committee with my questions when they are more fully formed, based in details. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like you're hearing from residential care facilities. I haven't heard anything from mine in my district. So
I think it's particular because they had just prior to the pandemic hitting and the economic shutdown, they couldn't take in more residents because they were trying to reduce the amount of exposure. But they had just done a remodeling, and so we're factored into the budget that we're going to get more people in from the remodeling, but they never were able to increase patients because, or I guess not patients, but clients for that reason. So they're caught in between. There doesn't seem to be a program that really meets their particular economic needs. I know we have this situation with businesses too. There are people that their situation is not exactly in line with what we're offering. So,
but we also have that additional, that the help is necessary to sort of keep them in business. Can you state that again, Stephanie?
Well, on the long-term care, it says appropriated by this section to any long-term care facility in urgent need of extraordinary financial relief in the event of a COVID-19 outbreak in the facility.
So maybe it won't, or maybe
if they have extraordinary financial need and it's not COVID related, I do think there's still an underlying extraordinary financial relief ability within the agency to help them. Not directly related to a COVID positive case.
I think the easiest thing, Becca, is if you could just email Stephanie and she can talk to Sarah Clark. And because sometimes they're so specific to a one situation that you can't
Yeah.
it's hard to figure out.
Thank
But in
you.
the long-term arena, extraordinary relief is not a foreign concept.
Okay,
No.
sure. There's not very tight margins there. all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? I can't believe it. It's 3:00.
God, how the time flies when you're having fun.
Well, I think once we get just some clarification on a couple of things,
Yep.
tomorrow afternoon should be a fairly easy afternoon, Friday afternoon. Senator Sears will be able to commute home and get there decent weather.
Right in front of me, all the way from the living room into the dining room. I'm gonna travel.
But I did hear the weather forecast. The weather's
That's
supposed to.
gonna be very cold.
Yeah, so it's probably good to be snuggled up at
Yeah.
home.
Well, yeah, I
Remember
miss my
how
Friday
hard we-
afternoon drives where I
Um,
think about all the things I should have said that I didn't say.
You mean you think lovingly about your colleagues, Dick? Is that
I
what
do. I think of all the things I should have said that I didn't say, and I think of all the things I said that I shouldn't have said on Friday afternoon's drive home.
I'm going to go offline. We've finished the work of the committee this afternoon. So